there's this expectation of absolute universality, like gravity.
Right. Yeah.
You drop an apple in New York, it falls. You drop an apple in Tokyo, it falls. We like things to be clean. We want them to apply to everyone everywhere.
We want the math to work out perfectly across the board.
Exactly. But then you step into the world of cultural psychology, and that clean, universal law of gravity starts to look a lot more like, I don't know, a local ordinance.
A local ordinance, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Because today on the deep dive, we are tearing down something that you almost certainly learned in high school, something you absolutely accepted as a universal fact of biology and the psychology. I'm talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
It is everywhere. It's foundational.
Right. But it turns out the famous 5-step pyramid isn't human nature at all. It's actually just a map of the American dream. And for decades, we've basically been telling the rest of the world they're holding the map upside down.
It really is a total paradigm shift. I mean, we've treated this pyramid as the definitive operating system for the human machine.
Like it's just hardwired into us.
Exactly. But what we're going to see today, going through these sources, is that a massive portion of the globe's societies in Turkey, Japan, South Korea, India, and beyond, they run on a completely different framework.
A completely different operating system.
Right. A collectivist pyramid of needs. And the sources we're unpacking today include this amazing cultural psychology research, some really deep sociological analysis, and this incredibly detailed comparative infographic that maps it all out.
And I want to say right up front, this isn't just like academic theory.
Yeah.
By the end of this deep dive, understanding this alternative framework might actually explain some of the most confusing dynamics in your own life.
Oh, absolutely. In your workplace, your family dynamics.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this, because before we build the new model, we really have to understand what we're deconstructing here.
You have to know what we're looking at first.
Right. So let's go back to 1943. Abraham Maslow publishes this paper, A Theory of Human Motivation.
And, you know, the historical context of 1943 is just vital here.
Because of the war?
Yes. We're in the middle of a global conflict.
Yeah.
But in the American domestic sphere, there is this intense focus on the individual psyche, on personal motivation. They are actively contrasting American values with totalitarian regimes.
That makes total sense. Like, we are the land of the free individual.
Exactly. So Maslow gives the world this incredibly neat linear 5-step pyramid. And the logic feels so intuitive to a Western mind.
It really does.
The rule is strict priority. Right.
Yeah.
You cannot comfortably move to a higher level until the fundamental needs below it are met.
Okay, let's actually walk through it quickly, just to anchor ourselves.
Yes.
Base level, level 1, physiological needs.
Right.
So that's food, water, sleep, shelter, the basic biological imperatives to just, well, keep the human animal alive. The logic is that a starving person isn't worrying about their social status.
They're just trying to get calories.
Right. And once you've secured your next meal, you move up to level 2, which is safety.
Physical security, economic stability, health, property.
Basically, you've survived today, so now you are trying to guarantee you'll survive tomorrow.
Exactly. Then you hit level 3, belonging and love. Friendships, romantic relationships, family bonds.
So once you are safe, you seek out connection.
Yes. And then level 4 is esteem, status, success, recognition. Because you don't just want to be in the group, you want to be valued by the group.
And you want to value yourself, I assume.
Right, self-respect. And finally, the peak, level 5, self-actualization, becoming the absolute best possible version of yourself.
Which has essentially become the gospel of modern society.
Oh, it's the foundation of business school curriculums everywhere.
Yeah.
Management consulting, basically the entire self-help industry of the last 50 years is just level 5 of Maslow's pyramid.
Yeah, that's so true. But the research we're looking at today pulls the rug out from under all of that.
It really does.
The core argument from the sources is that this pyramid is the product of a very specific geography, history, and cultural operating system.
Yes. The protagonist of Maslow's journey isn't humanity as a whole.
It's the isolated individual.
Exactly. If you look closely at the architecture of Maslow's structure, every single step is fundamentally isocentric.
Okay. I mean, I get that for self-actualization, obviously, but even love and belonging, level 3.
Especially love and belonging.
Yeah.
Think about how socialization is framed in Western psychology. It's almost instrumental.
Instrumental how?
Like, why do you seek out friends or a partner?
Yeah.
To fulfill your emotional needs.
Oh.
To cure your loneliness.
Oh, wow. Okay. I see what you mean.
The focus remains completely anchored on individual satisfaction. And when you reach the peak, self-actualization, it is purely about maximizing my potential.
Not the community's potential.
Right. It is the ultimate expression of the I.
Okay, I have to push back here a little bit, just playing devil's advocate, because this sounds a bit abstract. Aren't hunger and safety basic biological facts?
That they are, yeah.
Right. I mean, a starving person in New York and a starving person in Istanbul or Tokyo, they feel the exact same biological hunger pangs. Their stomachs are sending the identical neurological signals to their brains.
Absolutely true.
So, how can a physiological need be anything but a universal individual experience? If you're hungry, you're hungry.
The biology of hunger is absolutely universal. A dropping blood sugar level is the same biological mechanism everywhere on Earth.
Yeah.
But the sociology of the need.
The sociology of it.
Yes. The strategy for resolving that hunger and the meaning attached to that resolution, that is entirely culturally programmed.
Okay, I'm struggling to see the separation there. If I'm starving, I just need food.
Right. But think about how your brain tells you to get that food. In Maslow's model, the starving person is a solo agent tasked with finding calories for themselves.
Like a lone hunter-gatherer.
Exactly. The need is framed individually. How do I get food? But the research shows that in a collectivist model, that physical need is immediately placed into a social context.
Wait, really? Immediately?
Immediately. The reflex isn't how do I eat? It's much more like how do we feed our people? The solution to the biological problem is structural, not solitary.
Wow. So Maslow essentially mapped out the American individual's journey and just assumed it applied to the entire human species.
He took the water he was swimming in and assumed it was the whole ocean.
That's fascinating. But where does this intense focus on the I even come from? Because we didn't just wake up in 1943 with this mindset, right?
Not at all. To understand this psychological baseline, we really have to look at the historical engine that built the Western mind. And the cultural psychologists trace this back to three massive pillars.
Okay, lay them out for us.
The first is the European Enlightenment.
Which gives us René Descartes in the 17th century.
Yes. And think about the world before Descartes. In medieval Europe, the individual didn't really exist as a standalone concept.
Right, you were part of the great chain of being.
Exactly. You belonged to your village, your guild, your church. Your identity was entirely embedded in a hierarchy. You weren't an independent variable.
And then Descartes comes along with, what? Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am?
Right. He strips all of that external stuff away. He isolates the self from society, from tradition, from religion, and says that through pure reason alone, the individual mind can prove its own existence.
And that completely flips the universe.
It's radical. Suddenly, the isolated individual is the center of reality. Then you add John Locke arguing for natural individual rights.
Right.
You add Immanuel Kant developing the idea of autonomous moral law. John Stuart Mill focusing on individual liberty.
So this entire philosophical tradition just becomes obsessed with the autonomous, rational, independent individual.
Obsessed is the right word. Maslow didn't invent the I-centric human. He just took centuries of Enlightenment philosophy and translated it into a psychological framework.
But Descartes just gave us the theory, right? To actually turn this philosophy into a psychological instinct, like a drive that makes someone want to climb a pyramid of needs, you need an economic engine.
Which brings us perfectly to the second pillar, the Protestant work ethic.
Okay, yeah.
And here we look to the sociologist Max Weber. Weber analyzed how Northern European Protestantism, specifically Calvinism, created the psychological conditions for modern capitalism and individualism.
Okay, let's break this down. How does a 16th century theology end up in a 20th century psychology textbook? What was it about Calvinism specifically?
It really comes down to the concept of predestination.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. John Calvin taught that God had already decided who was going to heaven and who was going to hell before they were even born.
And there was nothing you could do to change it.
Nothing. Zero agency over your eternal soul.
That sounds absolutely terrifying. I mean, the psychological anxiety of not knowing if you're saved or damned must have been overwhelming.
It was completely overwhelming. So people started looking for signs. They wanted some indication that they were among the elect, the chosen ones.
Right, a clue.
And the sign they settled on was worldly success. If you worked incredibly hard, lived frugally, and accumulated wealth, it was viewed as visible, tangible proof of God's favor.
Wait, so hard work and individual wealth accumulation stopped being just a way to survive.
Exactly. They became sacred moral duties, a way to ease that terrible existential anxiety.
And now, if you look at the fourth level of Maslow's pyramid, esteem, the need for success, status, personal career advancement, and individual wealth. Maslow frames these as fundamental biological human needs.
Right, like we just naturally crave status.
But the historical data suggests they are actually just the psychological translation of the Protestant work ethic.
We've taken a cultural definition of success, one rooted in theological anxiety, and dressed it up in a scientific lab coat.
That is wild. Our baseline for feeling good about ourselves is literally just an inherited mechanism to prove we aren't damned.
It's incredible when you trace the lineage.
And then, of course, you combine that with the third pillar, which is the American frontier myth of the 19th century.
Manifest destiny, the image of the pioneer conquering the wilderness through solitary grit.
Right. The idea that you start from nothing and through your own sheer will, you build an empire.
You climb the pyramid step by step, conquering each level through your own individual effort until you reach the summit of self-actualization.
And honestly, if you look around today, this hasn't disappeared. It's just evolved into modern neoliberalism.
Oh, absolutely. The idea that the self is an ongoing optimization project.
Hustle culture, biohacking, the intense pressure to optimize your morning routine so you can squeeze out 10% more productivity.
Yes. If you've ever felt deeply guilty for taking a sick day or just resting on a Sunday doing nothing, you are feeling the ghost of the Protestant work ethic. It's whispering that your self-actualization project is falling behind.
The self is never finished.
It is an exhausting manifestation of Western individualism.
Okay, so this sounds like very high-level philosophy, but here's the real test. It's one thing to have this highly optimized theoretical I when times are good.
Right.
What happens when this individualistic operating system crashes into a massive real-world collective threat?
Well, we don't have to guess. The 2020 COVID-19 pandemic served as a live global laboratory for cultural psychology.
It really was the ultimate stress test. We had a universal biological threat, but profoundly different cultural reactions.
Let's paint the picture of what happened in March 2020. In highly individualistic Western societies, the US, the UK, Australia, the Netherlands, the system just froze.
Yeah.
What was the immediate knee-jerk reflex?
Hoarding. Pure, unadulterated panic buying.
Exactly.
I mean, we all remember the videos, literal physical fights in supermarket aisles over toilet paper, pasta, and hand sanitizer. It was chaos.
Psychologically, this is exactly what happens when the Western I faces a threat to its foundational physiological base. Level 1 of Maslow's pyramid.
Right, the base is threatened.
The internal monologue immediately becomes, how do I survive? I need to lock the door and stockpile resources. The fear of uncertainty and perceived scarcity manifested as extreme individual competition.
It was every man for himself, but the contrast in collectivist societies is just staggering based on the sources. The research highlights countries like Turkey, Japan, South Korea. There was a profound absence of this extreme hoarding behavior.
And we have to be clear here, it wasn't that these populations weren't terrified of the virus.
Right. The biological fear was identical. It was a terrifying time for everyone.
But the cultural reflex to that fear was entirely different.
The examples from Turkey during those first few weeks are fascinating. You had young people organizing to leave fresh bread at the doors of elderly neighbors they didn't even know.
Yeah.
You had neighborhood grocers, the traditional bakkal, opening up their Verzi Defterleri.
Let's explain what that is, because it's a perfect encapsulation of the culture. A Verzi Defterleri is a traditional credit notebook.
Right.
If you're short on cash, the neighborhood grocer just writes down what you owe in this book.
Mm-hmm.
It runs entirely on relational trust, not formal credit checks or bank approvals.
It's totally informal. And during the pandemic, you had grocers simply forgiving the debts of people who had lost their jobs.
Just erasing them.
Yeah. Or anonymous donors walking into a shop asking to see the notebook and just paying off the debts of the entire neighborhood. And in Japan and South Korea, we saw massive immediate adherence to public health norms. Mask wearing, social distancing.
And not because the government forced them at gunpoint.
Exactly, but out of a profound sense of duty to the collective structure.
Now, the common Western defense mechanism here is to say, well, maybe those countries just had better supply chains. Or maybe it's just about wealth.
Right, the argument that if you have enough money, you don't need to fight over toilet paper.
But the economic data flatly contradicts that. We saw extreme panic buying and hoarding in places like Sweden and the Netherlands,
which are extremely wealthy.
They're among the wealthiest nations on earth, with incredibly robust logistics and supply chains. So it wasn't the wallet, it wasn't the trucks, it was the cultural wiring.
When the collectivist we faces a threat, the fundamental framing shifts. The question isn't, how do I survive? It's, how do we survive?
If you're listening to this, I want you to think back to that first week of lockdowns. When the reality of the situation really hit you, what was your immediate instinct?
That's a great question.
Was it to secure your own pantry? To make sure you had enough for your household? Or was your very first thoughts to check on a vulnerable neighbor?
Right.
And there's no moral judgment here. We all react based on our programming. But your honest answer reveals the architecture of your psychological operating system.
That is so profound. So how does this architecture actually work? How do we map the wiring of the we? Because we have Maslow for the I.
For that, we turn to the foundational work of Geert Hofstede in the 1970s.
Okay, the 70s.
Hofstede was a Dutch social psychologist, and he got access to this massive trove of employee data from IBM.
Why IBM specifically?
Because it provided a perfect controlled environment.
Yeah.
You had a massive multinational corporation with offices in dozens of countries all over the world.
Right.
The employees were doing similar jobs, dealing with similar corporate structures, and answering similar surveys. But Hofstede noticed that the way they answered questions about workplace dynamics, authority, and motivation varied wildly, depending on what country the office was in.
Oh, wow. So the corporate culture was the same, but the local culture overrode it.
Exactly. And this is how he developed the individualism versus collectivism scale.
So what did he find?
He found that the US, Australia, the UK, and Northern Europe ranked at the absolute top of the individualism scale. An IBM employee in Chicago viewed their job as a personal transaction. I provide skills, you provide money, I advance my career.
Very transactional, very individual.
But an IBM employee in Tokyo or Istanbul, countries that fell heavily on the collectivist side, viewed the workplace much more like an extended family or community.
So loyalty and group harmony mattered more than individual advancement.
Precisely.
But how does that translate from a corporate survey to the internal psychology of a person?
Well, for that, we looked at cultural psychologists, Hazel Rose Marcus and Shinobu Kitayama. They took Hofstede's macro data and looked at the micro level, the self.
Okay.
They introduced these concepts of the independent self versus the interdependent self.
The independent self is the Western model, right? Identity is defined by your internal personal traits. So if I ask you who you are, you say, I am smart, I am an engineer, I am introverted.
Yes. Your identity is portable. It belongs to you, regardless of what room you are in or who you were talking to.
It's fixed.
It's what the researcher Richard Nisbett calls analytical thinking. Westerners are trained to look at the central object and separate it from its context.
Okay, so if Western identity is the isolated object, it's like going to a theater and watching a single solo performer on a stage under a bright spotlight. The focus is entirely on the soloist.
That's a brilliant analogy, yes. The soloist's value is derived entirely from their own individual talent. They stand alone. But the Eastern model, the interdependent self, is relational. Identity is defined by your connections. If I ask who you are, you're much more likely to say, I am a mother, I am a member of this community, I work for this company.
So if it's relational, it's more like an orchestra. The identity isn't the violinist, it's the harmony between the strings and the woodwinds.
Exactly. Nisbett calls this holistic thinking, focusing on the relationships and the context rather than the isolated object. The music only exists in the connection between the players.
That makes so much sense.
And think about what that means for psychological security. A soloist feels secure by practicing alone, by building their own wealth, by securing their own bunker.
By climbing Maslow's pyramid.
Right. But an orchestra player feels secure by listening to the person next to them, by ensuring the orchestra stays together.
Wow, so you literally cannot achieve psychological security through a solo bank account. It requires maintaining a web of social ties.
It's a completely different foundational need. And this is the perfect moment to take Maslow's pyramid, scrap it entirely, and build the Eastern collectivist pyramid from the ground up, using this interdependent operating system.
I love this. Let's do it. We're going to build a new 5-level pyramid, level 1. In Maslow's world, this is the physiological base, right? The individual eating a sandwich alone to stay alive.
But the collectivist model names this first level collective soul, the collective table.
The collective table. Shared physiological existence.
In collectivist cultures, physiological needs are inherently social from the very beginning. Let's look at the Turkish cultural context again, because the sources provide incredibly rich examples of this.
Okay.
In that culture, food is not just calories. It is considered a ritual of unity.
Because setting a table is a social act. Feeding a guest isn't just polite, it's a profound moral duty.
Think about the logistics of a traditional rural Turkish wedding. They don't just cater a meal for a few invited guests. They cook massive cauldrons of rice and meat over open fires to feed the entire village.
Literally everyone.
Everyone. Or consider the intense sharing of food during the month of Ramadan, where these massive tents are set up in public squares to feed thousands of people together.
And the tradition of distributing meat during the Eid al-Adha holidays to ensure absolutely no household goes without.
Right. These aren't just quaint culinary traditions. They are sophisticated cultural mechanisms that take a raw physiological need and collectivize it.
So if hunger is solved socially, then the individual's core biological drive isn't solitary hoarding. Their drive is ensuring they remain part of the network that shares the food.
Notice the structural shift here. It's massive. Maslow puts belonging all the way up at level 3.
Right. He argues that first you eat, then you get safe, then you look for friends.
But the collectivist model says no. Belonging is baked into survival at level 1. You eat because you belong. If you don't belong, you might not eat.
That completely flips the script on what a fundamental need actually is. Belonging isn't a luxury, it's survival. Okay, moving up to level 2. Maslow calls this safety. So insurance, property lines, an individual savings account. The collectivist model calls this toplumsal social security.
But we aren't talking about a government welfare check in the mail here.
Right.
We are talking about security defined by human networks.
The reliance on informal solidarity networks, the whole I know a guy phenomenon.
Exactly. Hemshirilic networks are a great example of this.
What's that?
This is the concept where people from the same rural hometown who move to a massive city like Istanbul, they look out for each other.
Oh, like a hometown association.
Yes. They help each other find jobs, housing, and loans. Mm-hmm. Your safety net is literally the people you know.
The research also highlights this concept of Devlet Baba, the father state.
Right. This is a crucial element of political psychology in many collectivist cultures. In the West, the state is viewed as a cold, abstract legal bureaucracy.
It processes your taxes, it enforces contracts, and you mostly want it to stay out of your way.
But the father state concept views the government almost organically as a protective, overarching familial entity.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here again, because to a Western listener, this sounds a bit problematic.
Sure.
First, doesn't the father state concept just breed authoritarianism and dependency? And second, if I go to do business and the whole system runs on I know a guy or hometown networks, doesn't that just breed nepotism and corruption? How is that a valid psychological need?
Those are the exact critiques raised by Western observers. And to be fair, they are valid concerns when you are looking at institutional efficiency.
Right.
When deeply ingrained relational networks clash with modern Western-style bureaucratic systems, it absolutely creates friction, nepotism, and inefficiency. And the father state can indeed veer into paternalistic authoritarianism.
Right, because if the state is your father, you can't really sue your father for a breach of contract.
Exactly. But remember, we aren't analyzing economic efficiency or democratic theory here. We are analyzing psychological security.
Ah.
From a psychological standpoint, we have to recognize the immense resilience of this system. When formal institutions fail, and they do fail, the bureaucratic safety net tears.
That's true.
Think about the 2008 financial crisis in the West. People had legal contracts and formal mortgages, and when the system crashed, they were left entirely isolated. The paper didn't save them.
But in a collectivist system, the relational safety net that I know a guy network holds.
Yes, it's the difference between relying on a piece of paper versus relying on a relationship. The piece of paper can become worthless overnight. A deeply embedded social relationship provides a visceral psychological security that a formal contract simply cannot replicate.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you are fed at the collective table and you are secured by your social network. Now you move to level 3.
Right.
In Maslow's model, this is where you finally seek out friends and romance for emotional fulfillment. But the collectivist level 3 is called I live, acrobolic family, and kinship.
Maslow's level 3 is essentially about avoiding loneliness. The collectivist level 3 is infinitely heavier. It is about generational duty.
The continuation of the generation. Which means marriage and having children are not merely individual lifestyle choices.
Right. In the West, you decide to get married or have kids if you feel it will actualize your personal happiness. If it doesn't, you just don't do it.
It's optional.
But in a collectivist framework, these are profound social expectations. You have a massive responsibility to your lineage.
I want to dig into the reality of that because honestly, it sounds exhausting. Take elder care, for example.
That's the perfect example to look at. In an individualistic society, when parents age, it's common and completely accepted to place them in an assisted living facility.
Sure.
The logic is that the adult children have their own lives, their own self-actualization projects to focus on, and professional care is more efficient anyway.
But in a collectivist society, doing that is often viewed as a profound moral failure.
Absolutely. Because taking care of your aging parents isn't just about what's convenient. It is a fundamental duty tied directly to your identity. Your psychological well-being is inextricably linked to fulfilling your role in the generational chain. Individual emotional satisfaction is completely secondary.
Wow. Which leads us to level 4, and this is where the two models completely diverge.
They really do.
Maslow calls level 4 esteem. Feeling good about yourself, getting a promotion, building your self-respect. The collectivist level 4 is honor, namus, veus honor, shame, and face.
Maslow's esteem is internally generated, it's self-respect. Collectivist honor is a value that is given and crucially can be taken away by society.
To understand this, the sources look at the sociological distinction between guilt cultures and shame cultures.
Yes. Western individualistic societies are predominantly guilt cultures. The moral compass is installed internally.
So your behavior is regulated by your individual conscience?
Right. If you steal something and absolutely no one sees you do it, you still feel a deep internal pang of guilt. You have violated your own internal standards.
But Eastern collectivist societies are categorized as shame cultures.
Yes, and we really need to clarify the word shame here because in the West, we view shame as this toxic, crippling emotion that you need to work through in therapy.
Right. If you go to a Western therapist and say, I'm obsessed with what people will say about my career choices, the therapist will tell you that's a pathology. They'll tell you to stop caring what others think, set boundaries, and live your truth.
But in a shame culture, the moral boundary isn't just internal, it's external observation and societal judgment, the concept of losing face.
There's a Turkish phrase in the sources, El alem nedir, what will people say?
Yes. And in this context, that is not a pathology to be cured. It is a vital, highly functional accountability mechanism.
It is how the social fabric is maintained.
Exactly. You are constantly evaluating your behavior in the mirror of society. If you act selfishly, you don't just feel internal guilt. You bring shame upon your family. You damage the harmony of the community. You lose face.
So if Maslow's esteem is like a physical trophy, you win. You keep it in your own house, you look at it, and you feel proud of yourself, regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Right.
Collectivist honor is entirely different.
Let's build on that. If it's not a physical trophy, what is it?
It's like a digital currency.
Oh, interesting.
Think about it. The value of a digital currency is entirely determined by the network agreeing on its worth. You can't just mint your own honor in isolation. Your standing is entirely relational.
That's exactly how it works. And just like digital currency, if the network loses faith in you, your account goes to zero overnight.
Wow.
You cannot sustain face if the community decides you've acted dishonorably.
Okay, so we've reached the summit, the peak of the pyramid. You've been fed by the collective, secured by your network, bound by generational duty, and regulated by societal honor. What does the ultimate realization of a collectivist life actually look like? Because in the West, self-actualization is like the entrepreneur selling their startup and doing yoga alone on a mountaintop.
The collectivist peak is the absolute opposite of that isolation. Level 5 is anamvin nisle karsha sorumluluk, responsibility to meaning and generation.
So it is self-transcendence for the benefit of others.
Yes. The ultimate goal is to become a vital, contributing link in the chain. And the research pulls in concepts from several different collectivist cultures to illustrate this. And it's fascinating how they all align at this peak.
Let's break some of those down. The Japanese concept of ikigai.
Right. In the West, we've recently imported the word ikigai. You see it in airport bookstores everywhere.
Yeah, we usually translate it as finding the sweet spot between your passion, your skills, and what pays well. We just cram it right into Maslow's self-actualization box.
We completely turn it into a career optimization tool.
Exactly.
But in its authentic Japanese context, ikigai is deeply tied to social utility. It is about what you can give to the world and your community. It is a relational meaning, not just personal maximization.
And the same goes for the Confucian concept of Ren.
Yes. Ren roughly translates to humaneness or virtue. But the mechanism of Ren is entirely social.
How so?
You cannot be virtuous alone in a room. Virtue literally only exists in the quality of your interactions with others. A hermit cannot possess Ren.
Wow. Then there's the Russian concept of sobernost.
Rooted in Orthodox Christianity, soberness is a profound sense of spiritual community and collective spirit. It dictates that true meaning is found in the organic unity of the community. Elevating the individual above the community isn't just selfish, it actually severs you from truth.
And finally, the Turkic concept of el.
El refers to the community, the public. The Turkish idiom el isim yaşamak literally means living for others.
Which, again, sounds toxic to a Western ear. In a Western context, living for others means you are a people pleaser who lacks personal boundaries.
But in this collectivist framework, it is the highest moral aspiration. At the top of Maslow's pyramid, you plant your flag at the summit, you look inward, and you ask, who have I become? But at the top of the collectivist pyramid, you look outward at your community and the next generation, and you ask, what have I left behind?
The cultural ideal fundamentally shifts. You no longer strive to be a successful person, which is an individualistic metric of wealth and status. You strive to be a fait de l'insan.
A useful person.
A useful person. It's about legacy. It's about the children you raised, the traditions you maintained. The sources mention the tradition of vakaf, or charitable foundations, as the institutional realization of this.
Yes.
And this framework even changes the psychological reality of death.
How so?
Well, think about it. In the individualistic Maslow model, death is the ultimate tragedy because it is the absolute end of the I. The project of self-actualization is forcibly terminated.
Game over.
Right. But in the collectivist model, death is viewed as a link in a continuous chain. You are just passing the baton. If you've been a useful person and left a strong legacy for the generation behind you, your meaning doesn't end when your biology does.
That completely recontextualizes the human lifespan. And honestly, it highlights the tragic irony of the modern Western self-help industry.
What do you mean?
Well, we are constantly searching for meaning, feeling isolated, feeling completely burnt out by the relentless hustle of neoliberalism.
So we try to import these Eastern concepts, mindfulness, ikigai, community care.
But we strip them of their collectivist roots. We try to run collective software on individualistic hardware. We want the deep, comforting benefits of community, but we absolutely refuse to let go of the supremacy of the isolated I.
We want the support without the obligation.
Exactly. We aren't willing to submit to the duties and obligations that actually create that community in the first place.
You cannot achieve interdependent meaning if your ultimate goal is still individual supremacy.
It's a structural impossibility.
Okay, take a breath because this has been a massive journey today.
It really has.
We took Maslow's universal pyramid, the textbook standard of human nature, and we deconstructed it. We exposed its specific Western DNA, Descartes isolating the mind, Calvinism creating the anxiety of work, and the American frontier glorifying the solo climb.
And then we built an entirely different architecture right alongside it. A pyramid where survival is shared at the collective table.
Where security is guaranteed by your relational network.
Where meaning is derived from generational duty and the accountability of face.
And where the ultimate peak isn't self-actualization, but becoming a useful human being.
Understanding that these two distinct operating systems exist is essentially a superpower in the modern world.
Yeah, I totally agree.
If you manage an international team, you need to understand that your employees in different countries are motivated by entirely different psychological architectures.
Or even just look at your own life. If you grew up in an immigrant family that operates on the collectivist pyramid, but you were educated in a Western school system built on Maslow's pyramid.
The friction you feel with your parents isn't just a personality clash.
No. It is a literal collision of two incompatible psychological operating systems. Realizing that Maslow isn't the only map of human needs is just incredibly liberating.
It gives you permission to value your obligations, your family duties, and your community legacy as fundamental psychological needs, not just chores that get in the way of your real life.
Exactly. It proves that human nature is far more adaptable and beautifully complex than a simple 5-step staircase. Which brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with today.
Okay.
Look at the goals you've set for yourself this year, the things you are stressing over right now. Ask yourself, are you climbing Maslow's pyramid of the I, trying to maximize your own potential, your own wealth, your own isolated status?
Or are you climbing the pyramid of the we, trying to be a vital link in the chain, trying to be a useful person for your community?
And more importantly, are you sure you're climbing the right one for you? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an absolute mind bender.
It really has. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time as we continue to unpack the ideas that shape our world. Until then, keep questioning the map.